I want to read some sections before I read some sections, just some sharing. One of the favorite fun activities in Krishna consciousness is hearing Prabhupada stories. Somebody that attended we were over in Gitanagari having our retreat at Gitanagari, Tom, and another group of devotees were in North Carolina having their gathering of Sadhu Sangha retreat. Same weekend in Los Angeles was their annual, 28th annual, or they've been doing it for many years, Prabhupada Festival. And there are probably other gatherings on Memorial Weekend, but someone that's from the West Coast attended that for the first time, and they had a lot of appreciation for what their experience was. Devotees in general like they can sit for hours and hear Prabhupada stories. So I'm going to give you a little Prabhupada story in relation to Srimad Bhagavatam. My first experience of Krishna consciousness was at the university that I attended, where Prabhupada came to the campus. I didn't know anything. But just hearing Prabhupada chanting on stage with Allen Ginsberg, my life changed. I didn't even know what it was. But in retrospect, my life changed. And after some time, the first temple that I resided in was in Boston. I'd gone to Boston to look into graduate schools in Boston because there's so many colleges in Boston. And when I visited the temple, the experience was so amazing that after graduation I went straight to Boston and joined the temple. Took a little leave of absence from my education. And then after some time, one summer, 1970 summer, I was afraid. Prabhupada wanted a printing press, and there was a time when there wasn't BBT, it was ISKCON Press, just part of ISKCON. Then he wanted to separate it, so if anything happened to ISKCON, his intellectual property would be protected. So a separate trust was created in Los Angeles. But the BBT, then ISKCON Press, was in Boston. And Prabhupada, following, as he did everything, following Bhaktisiddhanta step by step, he wanted a printing press. So they bought a printing press and put it in the ground floor of the temple, and nobody knew how to run the press. But there was a devotee in New York named Gadadhar that had worked for some time in a printing press, offset printing press. So he was requested to come to Boston, and I was the trade. I was sent from Boston to New York. And after some time in New York, I became the Sankirtan leader and the temple commander. And being temple commander, as the temple had grown to, the population was some number, including then ISKCON Press shifted from Boston to New York, so it was a lot of devotees. Being temple commander means you have to find people to do what has to get done, and if you can't find somebody to get what has to get done, you do it yourself. That was the job description. So when Prabhupada came to visit, in New York, he stayed at the temple. It was a double brownstone rented building. I don't know if in Minneapolis you know what brownstone means, but it's a 4-story building. It's like, the 20 by 100, and it's made of stone, brownstone. And there were 2 side by side. The owner leased both sides. So it was a walk up from the sidewalk level, and then a little basement you walk down. But you walk up and you go to the left and there's the temple room, big space. And then the other brownstone, to walk up in the same big space, that was Prabhupada's quarters. Yeah, it was like a gymnasium, it was huge size. And the front area was where he could have gatherings or whatever he wanted to do. And then at the back side was where his desk, and then another separate space where he had a room he could rest in, and then like a closet kind of thing for his secretary. Prabhupada's quarters was on, so looking at the outside of the 2 buildings, there's the temple room, and there's Prabhupada's quarters. And there was a doorway between the 2 buildings, and one of my services during Prabhupada's visit was to make sure that his quarters were guarded, because he didn't want anybody doing anything that could be, regrettable. So it was really easy to get people to guard Prabhupada's quarters, because then they could say no to people. You can't come in. Jai Vijay, like gatekeepers. And even at night, because the door between the temple side and Prabhupada's quarters side was a door that opened in the direction of Prabhupada's quarters. So someone could just lie down, put their head against the door, and nobody could come in without banging their head. So it was really easy to get somebody to do those services. And then in the back, there's a garden. This is Brooklyn. And so around the perimeter of the backyard was tall, 10 feet tall cement wall. But people in Brooklyn know how to climb walls, and so we had to guard Prabhupada's quarters in the backside. And doing that during the day was no problem. People would be happy to be back and watch Prabhupada doing whatever Prabhupada would be doing all day long. But the difficult one was at night. Nobody wanted to do it. So when you're the temple commander, you have to do it yourself. But I happened to really, really like, so he stayed this one time, he stayed for a week, which is a long time for Prabhupada to stay in any one place. And I observed, because I was guarding, there's a big bay windows, big windows, and then just outside is the garden area and then the big wall. So I was just outside the window on some kind of a place, like I think the fire escape, kind of the metal fire escape thing, just guarding Prabhupada's quarters. So his schedule went something like this, at least at the time. Around a little before 9, around 9-ish, or a little before 9, he would leave his desk, everyone would clear out, and then he would go to the front room, which I could see from the back, and he would sit at a harmonium, big space, maybe 5-6 times this space, big space, empty space, and just play harmonium and sing bhajans. Songs of Narottam Das Thakur and Bhakti Vinod Thakur. I didn't know them, but Prabhupada certainly knew them. He didn't need a songbook, he just sang his heart, calling to Krishna. And then, quarter after, 20 after, he would get up, come back to his room, turn out the light, and then go to the room where he would rest. So it was around before 9:30. At 11:30, the light went up. And he went to the it looked like, because he wasn't there so long, to just wash his face and mouth and so forth. And then another light went on and he went and sat at his desk a little before 12 o'clock. And from before 12 o'clock until 4 o'clock, 4 hours, he would sit at his desk and do translation work. So on his desk, it was, because he did sit in a chair, he sat cross-legged, so it was a low desk, but a big space by design, because he would travel with the commentaries of the acharyas in Sanskrit. So as far as I could see from the window at least, those books that are so big, they open really big. So he had those, and then opened them up, and then he would run his finger across the page, different books. Then he got his dictaphone and would dictate the Bhaktivedanta purports. While everybody's upstairs zonked out, because we couldn't keep the pace that he kept. Young, 20-year-old, athletic, invigorated, inspired to be in Prabhupada's association young men. At the end of the day, was it. They're upstairs snoring away. And Prabhupada was, in his 70s, with, I found out later from Hari Sori, multiple medical problems, but you'd never know it until, I didn't know it until he told me, because he was go, go, go. So, around 2 hours of sleep, up, and doing his translating work for 4 hours straight. And then around 4 o'clock he finished his translating work, I assume he took a bath, came out, sat and chanted japa until 6 o'clock, and then he went on his morning walk for 1 hour, and went at 7 o'clock back for greeting the deities, Guru Puja, morning class. My stretch of time was over by that time. So, but the impression, very strong impression, which I'm sharing with you, it's been with me since, which is the dedication that Prabhupada invested in his Bhaktivedanta purports. And I knew that from Boston because ISKCON Press was there and saw the whole setup. In fact, one of the reasons for staying in Boston was because of the quality of the people that were involved in ISKCON Press, without all the details, just or the names of the persons, awesome personalities. It was, along with book distribution, book publication, was extremely important to Prabhupada. And so his part, besides making sure everybody did what they were supposed to do, was to provide the material. Every night, at least during that stretch that he was in Newark, it was, I don't know if he did all the time, 4 hours, non-stop, in the wee hours of the morning, when it's completely quiet outside and everyone else is in the mode of ignorance, and he's in transcendence, giving us the Bhaktivedanta purports. So the dedication that I personally saw and experienced of how important providing the Bhaktivedanta purports was for Srila Prabhupada made me appreciate more and more and more and more and more to this very day how much about giving to the world this Srimad Bhagavatam, even before he came. What was the instruction? Everybody knows. The instruction of Bhaktisiddhanta, the first time they met in the last exchange, was take the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, deliver them to the English-speaking parts of the world, and by so doing, it'll be good for you and good for them at the same time. So the teachings of Lord Chaitanya was the instruction, and he translated Srimad Bhagavatam. Because the teachings of Lord Chaitanya is Srimad Bhagavatam, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. They're inseparable, they're the same. In fact, what I just said, that's an essential strategy or premise of the whole, the Satsandarbhas of Jiva Goswami. I'll embellish what I just said. In lines of disciplic succession, can somebody move their jacket so she can sit in the chair? Okay. Here comes another chair. Look at that. Are we going to have a language problem here? English is okay?
Hindi.
No? No English?
Hindi.
Hindi only. No Hindi, only English. Somebody can summarize for them at the end, yeah? Somebody who's going to do that service. You do the service? You summarize in Hindi at the end? You're being volunteered. No. They're volunteering.
You can
At the end. At the end. Not as we go along.
Yeah.
Just summarize the highlight,
Okay.
because otherwise we'll be distracted. With the great acharyas, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Nimbarkacharya, Vishnu Swami, Vallabhacharya, they wrote extensive summaries of their understanding of the scripture and thus their commentary on Vedanta Sutra that marks their line of disciplic succession. Srivasya and so forth. Commentaries on Vedanta Sutra. However, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't do that. Why didn't he do that? He didn't do that because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declared that the commentary on Vedanta Sutra was done already by the author of Vedanta Sutra, Sri Vyasadeva. Srila Vyasadeva compiled all the Vedas, summarized them in Vedanta Sutra, and wrote a commentary on Vedanta Sutra, Srimad Bhagavatam. So no need. Brilliantly, Jiva Goswami wrote a commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a commentary on Vedanta Sutra, which establishes, as any line of disciplic succession attempts to do, our rendering of what the scriptures say is best. That's what they're commissioned to do. Yeah? So Jiva Goswami had a strategy. It's really simple. 1, 2, 3. 1. Srimad Bhagavatam, which is in relation to what we're doing here, we're installing Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is the best pramana, evidence, means of knowing something. Shabda pramana, amongst different ways of knowing things. Shabda pramana is the best. And amongst the Shabda pramana, Srimad Bhagavatam is best. 2, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya are Srimad Bhagavatam, or Srimad Bhagavatam is the teachings of Lord Chaitanya that equal. Therefore, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya is best. 1, 2, 3. That was his strategy. I heard that explanation from Radhika Raman. Maybe some of you know him. Has he been here?
No.
No.
Radhika Raman, when he was 15, got a full scholarship to Oxford University. He got his PhD in a short amount of time. Brilliant. Is now a tenured professor in Sanskrit. Brilliant. So I heard this from him because he did his PhD thesis on 3 verses from one of the Sandarbhas, from Paramatma Sandarbha. So just 3 verses did his PhD. So he's very well conversant to Jiva Goswami. So I heard from him. That was his strategy. I'll do it again. Of all the means of knowing, all evidence or pramana, the best is Shabda Pramana, and among Shabda Pramana, the best is Srimad Bhagavatam. Two. Srimad Bhagavatam is the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. The teaching of Lord Chaitanya is Srimad Bhagavatam. 1-to-1 correlation. 3. Lord Chaitanya's teachings are the best. So, I'm a fan of Jiva Goswami, I'll confess. And I spent about 50 hours giving a seminar on what I just said in detail from Jiva Goswami's, the first of his 6 Sandarbhas. But this Srimad Bhagavatam that's being installed here, it's out of all the Vedas, there's a verse, Nigama kalpataror galitam halam idam. The Vedas are compared to a desire tree. Kalpa taror. Kalpa taror. Kalpa taru is a desire tree. So the Vedas, they supply everything. 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 You can go to the Vedas to get anything, it'll supply anything. Material, spiritual. It'll supply everything. And out of this desire tree of the Vedas, there's the ripened fruit. And the ripened fruit is said to be Srimad Bhagavatam. Why? Because aside from the supplying everything, necessities of life, what's the purpose of life? The purpose of life is, what's the purpose of the Vedas? The question is there in Bhagavad Gita, or the statement is there in Bhagavad Gita. The purpose of the Vedas is to know Krishna. Chapter 15, Bhagavad Gita. Vedaischa Sayar Vayar, Aham eva Vejo, Vedanta Krid, Vedavid, eva Chama. Bhagavad Gita. The purpose of the Vedas is to know Krishna. Many people, chapter 2, Krishna says many people have a very different idea. What's that different idea? The purpose of the Vedas, I've experimented, I've done little surveys with different audiences. And what Krishna says is true. The purpose of the Vedas is to give you codes of Dharma so that you can live your life according to theistic conduct, proper conduct. You can lead a good life. And because you lead a good life, you get piety. And in this life you get the fruits of piety, so you prosper. And then after this life, you go to Swarga. That's the purpose of the Vedas. Krishna says, some people say, there's nothing more than that. Although Krishna says, chapter 15, something far more than that. The purpose of the Vedas is to know Krishna. And how do you know Krishna? It says in Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktyamam abhijanati yavanyaschasmi tattvataha. You can know Krishna by one means, by bhakti. So the purpose of the Vedas is to promote the means to get the ripened fruit, the love of God. To know through love of someone, you know that someone. It's very simple. Get married. You get to know that someone that you're married to. Before you're married, you don't really know that person. You think, oh, he's nice, she's nice. Let's get married. And then you live together and you find out other things. Not, you find everything. And when love is there, because you know everything and you accept one another and you help one another grow, that's a wholesome marriage. Not just dharmic, but a Krishna conscious marriage is you go towards Krishna together. Not just you do dharma together and then you prosper together and you join together and you go to heaven together. But beyond that is to go to Krishna. Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tatvata chapvadeham purnar janma na. By knowing Krishna, purnar janma na. Just by yomam veti tattvata, just by knowing Krishna in truth, tattvata. Purnar janma na. Not swarga. Purnar janma na. So that message is in its fullness, 18,000 verses. It's the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's the best. Interesting. According to the other Puranas, they all say the same thing. Not just the Bhagavatam says, I'm the best. They all say the Bhagavatam is the best. They all say it. There's a whole section in Padma Purana called Bhagavat Mahatmya. Bhagavata Mahatmya. It's a whole section. Several chapters just describing the Mahatmya, the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. And Padma Purana and Vishnu Purana, they're the principal sources of evidence for the Sri Vaishnavas. And Padma Purana says the Bhagavad Purana is best. Interesting. It's not just, they all say. Matsya Purana, and Skanda Purana, and Vishnu Purana, and they don't have several chapters dedicated, but they have many verses dedicated to saying it's the best. Why is it the best? Because it's simply one thing. It's Krishna. The Padma Purana describes that these 12 cantos, it's the literary form of Krishna. The first 2 cantos are his 2 lotus feet. The next 2 cantos are his thighs, then his waist, then his chest, then his shoulders, then his lotus face, his beautiful smile, and his beautiful eyes. 12 cantos. 1 through 12. There they are. The literary form of Krishna. Now Krishna, when he appeared, he showed his Swarup, Satchit Ananda Vigraha, his spiritual form. And he performed wonderful pastimes. And they're recorded here. And the sound, the vibration, narrating those pastimes is the same as the form. It's very important for us, as devotees, we chant Hare Krishna, it's very important to know the sound Krishna, and the name, and the person, the same. Abhina tvam nama namino. Abhina means non-different. Tvam means having the quality of non-difference. Nama nami, name and the object named are abhina. Qualitatively the same. And qualitatively, this is Krishna. Looks a little different than the deity form. And the sound of reciting Srimad Bhagavatam is a little different than the Mahamantra, but qualitatively the same, exactly. In fullness, absolutely the same. So just by reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, we're receiving Krishna in sound vibration form. And what Prabhupada was doing was recording that sound vibration and then the explanation of how to properly understand its message. Based on disciplic succession, it wasn't a creative writing exercise or by speculative process. It's descending process. And he made it very accessible to us in this printed form. So now I want to read something from Canto 1, Chapter 3. And Chapter 2 and 3 of Canto 1 is a response to foundational or fundamental or essence questions that make up the whole of the Bhagavatam. That's in Chapter 1. And the final of those 6 questions, they're very important questions. The final one is, Krishna has left the planet. These are sages assembled in Naimisharanya, and they're in big anxiety because Krishna left the planet. And so they say to Sutta, when Krishna was present, just by the marks on his feet, as he walked about the earth, he made the whole earth auspicious. And religious principles were upheld because Krishna was present. And the demoniac forces were dispelled because Krishna was present. And everything was nice. Favorable for us sages, and then in turn everybody else, the whole world population. But Krishna's gone. Now that Krishna has gone, where are religious principles taking shelter? It's Kali Yuga. Where are religious principles taking shelter? So that's the section, that's in Chapter 1. In Chapter 3, here's the answer. We'll just read a little bit. Final verses of Chapter 3. Starting with text 37. The foolish, with a poor fund of knowledge, cannot know the transcendental nature of the forms, names, activities of the Lord, who is playing like an actor in a drama, nor can they express such things, neither in their speculations nor in their words. Only those who render unreserved, uninterrupted, favorable service unto the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, who carries the wheel of the chariot in his hand, can know the Creator of the universe in his full glory, power, and transcendence. Only by making such inquiries in this world can one be successful and perfectly cognizant. For such inquiries involve transcendental ecstatic love unto the personality of Godhead, who is the proprietor of all the universes, and guarantee 100% immunity from the dreadful repetition of birth and death. hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam has that result. Guaranteed. So now comes the verse. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam Uttama Shloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishihi Nikshreyasya Lokasya Dhanyam Shwashchayanam Mahat. Translation: this Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of God, and it is compiled by Vyasadeva, the incarnation of God. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people, and it is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Srila Vyasadeva delivered it to his son, who is the most respected among the self-realized, after extracting the cream of all Vedic literatures and histories of the universe. Shukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, in his turn, delivered the Bhagavatam to the great Emperor Parikshit, who sat surrounded by sages on the bank of the Ganges, awaiting death, without taking food or drink. Krishna sva dhamo bhagate dharma jnanadibi saha. This Bhagavad Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. Puranarko donoditataha. So there's a metaphor where the Bhagavatam is compared to the rising of the full moon just after the sun has set. The sun set metaphorically means Krishna is departed. So the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. The sun sets in the west and is dark. After Krishna's departure, it's Kali. Shortly after, there's a short Sandhi, a short juncture of time, and then Kali Yuga begins. And it's a period of darkness where knowledge and dharma are gone. However, shortly after Krishna's departure, on the eastern horizon comes the full moon. In this case, the full moon is as brilliant as the sun. During the night, there's this luminous full moon, as brilliant as the sun, but cooling like the moon. It's nice, it's a metaphor. Because when Krishna comes, he kills the demons. So that's heat. And the rays of the sun can be scorching, but the rays of the moon are very soothing. So this Srimad Bhagavatam has that same potency as the sun to dispel darkness, soothing like the moon. It takes away, by being exposed to Srimad Bhagavatam, the person who receives it has negative influences of Kali dispelled, but in a very gentle and soothing way, instead of Krishna coming and killing. Just by sound. Very gentle and soothing and pleasing. It's the nature of this Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's two things I'm going to end. It's life transforming. Maybe I was visiting in the Washington, D.C. area. Somebody here's from Richmond, not far from Potomac. And I was giving a morning class at the temple. And in the audience were some of my very much appreciated God brothers and God sister. Anu to love, and Rukmini, without naming all the names. We're really wonderful devotees. You know Rukmini, right? No, not at all. She's a wonderful devotee, Prabhupada disciple. She became initiated disciple when she was 16 and has served Prabhupada totally loyally since then. So, she said, you've been a devotee for so many years, and could you share with us what has enabled you to go through what you've gone through for so many years, just loyally serving Prabhupada? I didn't have to think about it. I said two things: gratitude and Srimad Bhagavatam. I didn't elaborate. I don't need here to elaborate, but I can tell you shortly that my experience is that Srimad Bhagavatam transforms the inside. I have experience, deep conviction, and it carries me. So the world outside may not change. It may or may not change. It's always changing, but change for the better, may or may not change for the better. But the inside, how you experience the world around you, life and relationships and everything, completely changes from exposure to Srimad Bhagavatam. So I'm really happy that you're inviting Krishna in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam in your home, and please read regularly, because the Bhagavatam recommends that you read Nashta Prayeshu Avadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtaki. All that is abhadra, inauspicious, nashta, prayeshu. And in its place, bhakti arises. And when bhakti arises and the inauspicious things are removed, your experience of life is different. And it's so simple. Just open the book and start reading some pages. Of course, you invest consciousness. It's not a mechanical exercise. But as you go through the text of Srimad Bhagavatam, it's exactly why Prabhupada invested so much personal time and energy every day, every day, every day, every day, 4 hours every day. I mean, think of something that you do 4 hours every day besides sleeping at night and doing your job at work. What else do you do for 4 hours every day? It's so important to have the means to cross the ocean of material existence. So many things to say. I think I'm going to stop saying so many things. I'll say one more thing. In Canto 10, Chapter 2, there's prayers by the demigods to Krishna. He was within the womb of Devaki, in the prison house of Kamsa, and the demigods came into the prison house. Devaki told her husband, I'm hearing you voices, and they sound very celestial. What do you think it is? So one of the prayers of the demigods says, great souls, this is Srila Prabhupada, but it's the demigod saying to Devaki, great souls, as they leave this world, they leave behind them a boat to cross over the ocean of material existence, so that those who are remaining in material existence can join him beyond material existence, on the other side of the ocean. That's what Prabhupada was doing through the Bhaktivedanta purpose. Of course, our whole society and deity worship and everything. But special importance for him was his literatures, and amongst his literatures, again and again, the Srimad Bhagavatam was the first thing he did, first canto Bhagavatam. To give the message of Lord Chaitanya, he brought first canto Bhagavatam. And then he very dearly wanted to complete it. he was so busy making other teachings of Lord Chaitanya and nectar of instruction and nectar of devotion and other things, he didn't complete it. Into the 10th canto, but he didn't complete. So his disciples completed on his behalf. But why did he do that? Why did he make that sacrifice? It was just compassion to give us a boat to cross over the ocean of material existence. He wanted to give that. So I understand that many of you, or most of you, if not all of you, already have Srimad Bhagavatam. Fantastic. And please get on the boat. Nityam Bhagavata Seva. Regularly. Nityam. There's a softer. Nityam means always. But softer is regularly, daily. Something. On a daily basis. We have busy lives. We may not have time for such things as hearing Srimad Bhagavatam daily. Please hear Srimad Bhagavatam daily. It'll carry you to the other side of material existence. Punar Janma Nam. And during this life, you'll experience the world around you in a different way. You'll be able to contribute to the world around you in a different way. You can really make a difference in the lives of others that are dear to you and those that you don't even know yet, if you hear Srimad Bhagavatam regularly. I have strong feelings about it, deep conviction in it. Doesn't matter ashram or your occupation or your intellectual skills or whatever. It doesn't matter any of those things. Just hear it. Try to understand it. Enter into the message as best you can, and it'll change your heart, change your life, even in this dark age of Kali. Okay. So any... Yeah.
Why the Sabda Brahman is the best, Maharaj? How to explain that? Somebody was asking this question like the other day.
Sure.
The scriptures has written by somebody, and
No.
why should be...
Okay. I'll keep it simple. It's a big topic, but let's keep it simple. The primary means of knowing things are three. If they can be expanded, but it's three. Direct sense perception. Seeing is believing. Second is reason and logic by inference. And the third is hearing from authority. The senses are fallible. Our reasoning power is based on sense perception and is also imperfect. So best is descending knowledge. So shabda literally means sound. Just like, for example, to get here, I flew with United Airlines. So if I want to know, is the flight going to be on time? There's a source to go to. I don't ask the gas station attendant. I don't ask the guy next door. I go to United Airlines, and say, is the flight on time? And that's material shabda, but that's the way to know about, is the flight going to be on time? For material knowledge, there's authority. And for knowledge of what's beyond matter, you need another kind of shabda. You need aparusheya shabda. Aparusheya means not human, not with the fallibilities of imperfect senses and reasoning powers that are limited. So shabda, we give it an adjective. Aparusheya shabda. And the monk, that's the Vedas. Now the question, somebody wrote them. Well, in the case of the Vedas that we have, it wasn't a person that wrote them. It was Vyasadeva. And Vyasadeva is a literary incarnation of Krishna, just as we read that little section. Krishna himself. So, well, that's interesting, but maybe it was just a person that wrote it, not Vyas. How do I know? Well, we know on the authority of the Vedas. Well, that's circular, because Vyas wrote them, and Vyas says, but maybe he was a guy, a scholar, that said, Vyasa wrote them, because he wanted people to pay attention to it, because Vyasa is the personality of Godhead. How do you know anything? Through this disciplic succession, just like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. When that disciplic succession is broken, knowledge is lost. So we're accepting the authority of disciplic succession. We have to accept something. We have to have faith in something. We're accepting the authority of disciplic succession. And there's consistency in that authority of disciplic succession. And then there's the practical experience of connecting with that disciplic succession. It's not proof, but it's evidence. Just like supposing we have a bunch of cables running across the floor, and you touch the end of each one, and one of them you get a shock. Then you know that's connected to the powerhouse. They paid their electric bill, and it's plugged into the socket, and on the other, the wire is not broken. You get an experience. The confirmation is experiential. But even more important than experience is this authority. Just as Arjuna says in Bhagavad Gita, not just I have this opinion, but Devata, Asita, the great authorities, they've all accepted Narada. So we're accepting an authority. We have to accept. Everyone accepts some authority. To know anything. The authority may be your senses, the authority may be your mind, or the authority may be a perfect person. And I could sit over here and say, well, I don't know. Then I'm accepting something. The authority of my mind that says, I don't know. So I have to accept authority of something. So we prefer, and we're using our logic to say, we prefer Purusha Shabda than the mind. And that consistently the scriptures say it. So we accept it. And then we get the experience. Consciousness becomes lifted. Confirmed. Like by the eating process, your hunger goes away. You have someone just have to tell you, your hunger has gone away. You can tell them, my hunger has gone away. I've experienced my hunger has gone away.
Thank you, Mother. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Maharaji, actually you were mentioning that when Krishna comes to kill the demons, that's like the scorching effect of the Srimad Bhagavatam, of presence of Krishna, and Srimad Bhagavatam is like a soothing mood.
Yes.
You were mentioning that one who receives it has very gentle, soothing, pleasing influence on the Kali, and that you were going to say that there are two effects of that. One is it's life transforming, the other is?
It's gentle. I mean, it's not harsh. When Krishna uses his Sudarshan chakra and chops off the head of Shishupal, that's the scorching sun. But the personalities of this age that are negatively influenced can become lifted. They have the light to see, even in the darkness of Kali. The light, same as the brilliance of the sun, although it's night.
So in the sense that we can just simply read books, it's very easy in a sense. We don't have to go through the scorching of the...
Yeah, we get the purification without losing our life. We continue living our life and become elevated and purified. Okay. So I think we're gonna do the next thing, we're gonna have Arti
Yes.
for Srimad Bhagavatam on this auspicious Ekadasi day. And then we'll take Ekadashi Prashadam.